Welcome back to this Sunday election edition of Power in Politics. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, as we told you earlier in the show, wore a bulletproof vest and was surrounded by heavy security at a campaign rally last night in Mississauga. Sources tell CBC News it was in response to a security threat. Meanwhile, with just a week left in this campaign, polls are certainly shifting. So let's get right to it with the Sunday Power Panel. In Toronto, Supriya Dwivedi, host of Global News Radio's 640 Toronto morning show. Alongside her is Brad Levine of Council Public Affairs. And here with me in studio, Rachel Curran, former Director of Policy to Stephen Harper, now Senior Associate with Harper & Associates, and the CBC's polls analyst, Eric Grenier. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. So before we get into this, the stuff with the poll tracker and the polls, I do want to get your reaction to, and Supriya, I'll begin with you, the idea of a leader, a federal leader in this campaign having to, face or having to wear a bulletproof vest because of a security threat, although the RCMP isn't detailing it, but of a security threat so great that was necessary. What does it tell you?
Well, it's incredibly worrying, right? And it's incredibly disheartening. Unfortunately, however, I don't think it's all that surprising necessarily, given not just this campaign, but just the tone and tenor of political debate in this country for the last few years. And I don't want to turn this into, taking partisan shots at the other parties or have this be some sort of petty "I told you so" moment. But this is particularly why, when you have, one party that is spreading misinformation on something like a simple motion to condemn Islamophobia, like M103, or you have the yellow vesters that are, on their Facebook page are regularly putting out death threats to the Prime Minister, calling him a traitor, calling him treasonous. This is exactly why, when you have associations and you refuse to denounce an outlet like The Rebel, it becomes incredibly worrying. And I know that Mr. Scheer did once Charlottesville had happened, but he didn't when they sent a reporter out on some sort of conspiracy theory fact-finding mission after the Quebec City mosque shooting. This is unfortunately the somewhat natural progression of these sorts of debates that we've been having, and without saying that there's I think without saying that one party has a monopoly on crazies, of course, because no party does. I think this is why it's incredibly important to call out hate and to call out unacceptable rhetoric and threats as they happen in real time.
Do you think it is, a natural progression, Rachel? The RCMP is, and Catherine Tunney, our colleague, as well as Ashley Burke, reported on how they're monitoring online hate directed at everybody, and there is a level of concern that it translates to something more physical. I'm not an expert in the area. I don't know. I know that the online world in politics is like vitriolic and stuff, but I don't. Is it natural to progress to this?
I don't know. I don't think we can ever really know what triggers violence and what causes someone who's engaging in or watching or hearing violent rhetoric to turn to violence. It's happening on all sides. I agree with a lot of what Supriya is saying, but Justin Trudeau was also attacked recently at the climate strike protest in Montreal by a protester who's subsequently been charged with assault, and who was calling him a climate criminal. Which is not particularly helpful. And we've seen, sort of similar violent actions by Antifa protesters. So I don't think it is a partisan issue. I think it's difficult to know what causes people to become violent. But look, I agree. There's got to be some responsibility taken for rhetoric, some responsibility taken for statements put out publicly. And leaders in particular should be very careful about what they're saying and what they're putting out there.
Brad, what do you think?
Well, I do see that what we saw last night in Mississauga is I think we could draw a line that there is some progression. We saw at the provincial level, and we talked about it on the power panel, the weekly on the power panel. There was premiers who would get extra coverage from RCMP because of the violent threats against them, particularly women. It's not just, women women politicians go through a tremendous amount of violence, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's threats that officials must take seriously. That happens in multiple parties. It happens at the provincial as well as the federal level in this country. There are examples of the hate, what we're seeing in Hamilton right now, where outside of Hamilton City Hall, neo-Nazi fascists are gathering, white nationalists are gathering, they're building a head of steam, and it needs to be called out each and every time. Now, don't know where the threat to Mr. Trudeau is stemming from, but in terms of the conversation and in terms of how our political culture has changed in the last 4 years, I've been involved in the last 7 federal elections in this country, and I don't remember the level of hate outwardly saying so. It was quite brazen. The hate in this country has been shown, and there's a tremendous amount of things that we as the public don't hear about that goes on behind the scenes for many reasons. And last night is the most outward example of that. Will that change in the last 7 days? Unlikely, but it does allow us for a second to pause to talk about the harm that Canadians put themselves in by being candidates, as well as those that protect them. There's people whose full-time job it is to monitor this, and we should take a pause for a second and salute those people that put themselves in harm's way each and every day, regardless of where the threat comes in against whom. There are people that put themselves in the front lines to protect our politicians each and every day.
Certainly, and you can see the evidence of that in the visuals. There are many RCMP officers heavily armed surrounding Mr. Trudeau. I just do want to underscore that we don't have any information, like the RCMP has not provided any information other than the sources in the Liberal Party saying there was a security threat. We don't know the genesis of it. We don't know the nature of it. Obviously, we saw the results of it, but just to underscore that.